Good afternoon. I'm just going to do the play-by-play here. There's a few of you who have not read the great article in the Valley Breeze that's been over the last couple of weeks that kind of gives you a little background on why we're here today. And what I'd like to do is maybe fill in a few of the blank spots. I'm sure everybody is aware of some of the story, and I'm going to very quickly just go over the whole story from beginning to end, and we're going to have our color commentators a little bit later. James Wilson, along with 61 other Irish political prisoners, was aboard the very last British convict ship sent to Australia, the Hougoumont, in January of 1868. Notable among the others was John Boyle O'Reilly, a name which became quite prominent in the annals of 19th century Irish-American history. O'Reilly, who escaped from a road gang just a year later actually, eventually found his way to America. He worked for various big city newspapers and eventually edited the Boston Pilot, America's first and foremost Irish newspaper. Not to digress. Wilson, whose actual name was James McNally, was born in Newry, County Down in 1836. There's conjecture as to why he changed his name, but allegedly the best rumor I've heard was he smacked a British bobby and immediately found that he was in deep hot water and it was time to get out of the situation, and the best way back in those days to get out of that situation was join the army. When he joined the army, he changed his name. Forevermore, he became James Wilson. As a young man, he served 7 years in the Bombay Artillery stationed in India, Syria, and Canada. He saw a lot of the world before he got back to Ireland. In the early 1860s, he returned and he joined the 5th Dragoon Guards in Dublin. While Britain was at its peak of world power during these years, the island of the post-famine era was a cauldron of political intrigue. The Great Famine that taught the Irish a never-to-be-forgotten message, that they were but a small cog in the merciless, impersonal system that was British colonialism. A system that had caused the death of 20% of the population between 1846 and 1850 and caused the forced immigration of yet another 20%. Wilson became a Fenian in 1864, joining the Irish Republican Brotherhood, the so-called IRB, taking oaths of obedience, secrecy, and vowing to secure a democratic Irish Republic by force of arms if necessary. After enrolling many members in the organization, Wilson deserted in November 1865, but was caught in Dublin several months later, was subsequently court-martialed, found guilty of mutiny, and received a sentence of death, later commuted to life imprisonment. In 1869, many of the Fenian prisoners were granted pardons, but not those with military service backgrounds. It soon became apparent to the remaining prisoners that they would be forced to serve the remainder of their sentences, all of which were lengthy or, like Wilson's, terminal. Their only choice was to die in prison or to flee. Boyle O'Reilly had escaped in 1869, and another IRB man, John Du Bois, was released in 1871 in England, under condition he settled outside the British Isles. Du Bois sailed to New York City, where he became a newspaper man for the New York Herald, and joined and soon led Clan McCabe, the American arm of the IRB, and a proponent of armed insurrection in Ireland. It was to Du Bois in 1873 James Wilson turned to for relief. A letter smuggled out found its way to Du Bois, who sent copies to the other Klan factions throughout North America. Wilson detailed the sufferings of the convicts under the brutal prison regime, reminding those that had been released of their obligation toward their fellow Irishmen who were not so lucky. He begged for the formation of a mission to aid the escape of the remaining prisoners. To quote his famous letter from the grave, "And what a death is staring us in the face, the death of a felon in a British dungeon and a grave among Britain's ruffians. I'm not ashamed to speak the truth, that it is a disgrace to have us in prison today. A little money judiciously expended would release every man that is now in Western Australia. Think that we have been nearly 9 years in this living tomb since our first arrest, and that is impossible for mind or body to withstand the continual strain that is upon them. One or the other must give way. His letters did not fall among deaf ears. Du Bois discussed the matter with Boyle O'Reilly and another Klan leader, Thomas Fennell. Du Bois had tried to organize a rescue attempt since 1872, but was told by Clan Gale leadership that funding was out of the question at that time. With characteristic persistence, Du Bois finally persuaded the 1874 Klan Convention that the plan developed by Wilson and the 3 American Klan leaders was a viable one, and that necessary funding should be made available as soon as possible. Eventually, IRB men and money were also incorporated into the plan. The plan itself involved several phases. A ship would be obtained capable of sailing on a legitimate commercial voyage, thus not arousing suspicion. The ship would rendezvous with the prisoners off a deserted beach. There were no walls necessary in the Fremantle prison because the nearest safe refuge was a 1,000-mile trek across a waterless desert or swimming the Indian Ocean. A team of co-conspirators disguised as legitimate businessmen were planted in Fremantle, the nearest town, and would abet the escape on the ground. The plan's simplicity was its strength, but also its dependency was upon perfect coordination between man, nature, and the adversary, which was almost its undoing. James Reynolds, a Klan member and rescue committee member, bought a 3-masted sailing bark, the Catalpa, for a little over $5,200. Having contacted whaling agent John T. Richardson of New Bedford, recommended his son-in-law, George Anthony, for the job of ship's captain. Anthony agreed, enlisted 22 seamen, and on April 29, 1875, sailed for the home port of New Bedford, most of the crewmen unaware of the real purpose of the voyage. First stop was Fayal in the Azores, where they unloaded 210 barrels of sperm whale oil. Sickness and persistent rumors of a hidden agenda caused the loss of most of the crew at Fayal, but Anthony recruited natives to take their place and set sail for Western Australia. On March 27, 1876, after braving a serious storm which cost the ship's foremast, delayed the journey, the Catalpa arrived at Bunbury, off Bunbury, Australia, and the fascinating series of events known as the Catalpa Rescue began in earnest.